For this lesson, we're going to multiply a polynomial by a monomial. So if you look at my problem right here, this is a polynomial. It has two terms. There's a 4r squared and a minus 2. But in front of it is only one term. Mono means one, so this is a monomial, one term. So how do we multiply this? Well, it's actually fairly straightforward and easy. You take your first term, the one out front, and we distribute it. So I just actually multiply it by this first term right here. And I multiply the 2 times the 4, which makes 8. And I multiply the r squared times the r squared, which makes r to the 4th power. Remember, our shortcut was we can add exponents. Okay, that's the first number. We also have to multiply by this last term over here. So there's 2 terms that I have to do multiplication twice. So I want to multiply 2 times negative 2 because of the minus 2. So 2 times negative 2 makes negative 4. And then the r squared doesn't have anything to multiply by, so that's just r squared. Okay, so we're going to type in our blank 8r to the 4th power minus 4r squared. Now, usually these are going to be binomials. So you can see we got one term here and 2 terms here, but it doesn't really matter. If there were 3 terms or 4 terms or whatever, we just keep multiplying. Since there are 2 terms in the parentheses, we're going to have to do 2 multiplications. So I'm going to take my term out front, my b squared, and I'm going to multiply it by negative 3b squared. So I'm going to take the b squared, I'm going to multiply it by negative 3b squared. Remember, this has a 1 in front. 1 times negative 3 makes negative 3. And then b squared times b squared makes b to the 4th power. Okay, that's this first multiplication. I'm going to take this b squared again, and I'm going to multiply it by my second number over here. So we're going to do b squared times, the second number is 4b. That has a 1 in front. 1 times 4 is 4. B squared times b to the 1st power, you add them together, that makes b to the 3rd power. And since they're both positive, that's a positive 4. And we need a symbol in there, and since it's positive, we're going to put a plus. So we would come over here to our little box, do negative 3. I did not want the calculator. Stop that. So negative 3 b to the 4th power plus 4 b to the 3rd power. All right, so same thing on each one of these. So I'm going to take my negative 8 that's in front, multiply it by both these terms. So we're going to do negative 8 times the first term, which is negative 3f squared. Negative 8 times negative 3 is 24. And since there's no more f's to multiply, just put the f squared on it. Then I come back and I multiply the negative 8, my term in front, by the second term. So that's going to be negative 8 times 3f. Negative 8 times 3 is negative 24. And negative 8 times f is just, well, there's no f there, so we don't change it. All right, there's my answer. So this should be fairly quick and fairly simple. I think where people usually have problems multiplying, you can use your calculator if you need to. And sometimes people have problems with like negatives and multiplying with negatives, but again, use your calculator. All right, you can see it's the same thing. So let's skip ahead. Now in this one, you can see that there's actually 3 terms inside the parentheses. And there's a 2n squared, a 4n, and a 3. No big deal, it's just a little bit longer. We're going to have to multiply 3 times. So I'm going to take my first term that's out front, and I'm going to multiply it by the first term in the parentheses. We're going to multiply negative 3n times 2n squared. So we multiply the numbers. Negative 3 times 2 is a negative 6. N to the 1st power times n to the 2nd power makes n to the 3rd power because we add the exponents. All right, switch my color. We're now going to multiply negative 3 times 4n. So negative 3n times the 4n. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. And this is an n to the first and n to the first. So if I add those exponents together, I get n to the second. When we come back and we get our last one, it's over here. So that's going to be negative 3n times 3. Well, negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. And n doesn't have anything to multiply by, so it's just n. So in the parentheses, I'm going to put negative 6n negative. I go 6n to the third power minus 12n squared minus 9n. Leave this out. Okay, let's jump forward. And we get into some word problems, or not word problems, but they're mathy problems, geometry problems, let's call them that. Now, remember, we're multiplying. That's all it's really asking us to do. So it says find the area. Well, to find the area of a shape like this, you do the base times height. Well, the base is 3x. And the height, well, the height is 2x plus 1. So I'm going to multiply these together. Oh, look, that's the exact same thing we were doing. So I'm going to take this first term, multiply it by the first term there. So I'm going to do 3x times 2x. 3 times 2 is 6. X times x is x squared. And then we're going to multiply the last one. So I'm going to do 3x times 1. Well, 3x times 1, that's just 3x. I need a symbol. Since it's positive, we'll put a plus. And that's it. We solved. So even though it looks scary and, oh, we got shapes, we're really just doing the same thing. It's just a fancy way of asking you to multiply them like we've been doing. So we put in our 6x squared plus 3x. Now, the only ones of these you really got to worry about are the triangles. All right, so we're going to do base times height. So my base is 2x. And I'm going to multiply that by the height, which is x plus 6. Now, the reason I said the only one you really have to worry about is the triangles is because this is not the formula for a triangle. A triangle is not base times height. A triangle is 1/2 times the base times the height. Well, if it's 1/2, I would just multiply these two together first. 1/2 times 2 just makes 1x. Then I would multiply it by the x plus 6. Any other shape, I would just do 2x times it. All right, so we're going to do 1x times x. That makes x squared. Do 1x times 6. That makes 6x. Put a little plus in there and call it good. So be careful on the triangles. Got to have them. Cut them in half. I would just cut the base in half. That's usually the easiest thing to do. So we don't want to take all of it. In this case, it was 2, so we just cut that in half and made it 1. All right, squares, anything else like that? Rectangles, parallelograms, it's just base times height. So let's do this last one here, and then we'll call it quits. So my base is x. My height is x plus 7. So I'm going to multiply x times x, which gives me x squared. I'm going to multiply x times 7, which gives me 7x. And these are actually easier because they're smaller numbers, simpler problems. Just look terrible because it's in terms of a geometry problem and finding the area. But really, we're doing the same thing we did throughout the entire problem. Okay. That's it. Again, something like this is a triangle. So if I was going to do this, I would go ahead and cut that 6.5 and make it 3, and then just do it like normal.